Hey everybody, this is TJR. I grew up as a teenager in the 70s, and I know we all get nostalgic about the music that existed during the decade of our youth. But honestly, that was a great decade. I mean, the 60s were really great too. I think the 50s were really great, but I think the 70s were really great also. And so many great bands and albums. Queen, David Bowie, Elton John, Led Zeppelin. I could go on and on and on. A few of the artists I just named may have actually started in the late 60s, but they really hit their stride in the 70s. And, it was an awesome decade for music. It's a decade that, quite frankly, I'm still exploring because there are so many great albums that I haven't heard. Even though I've heard a ton of albums, there are many great ones I haven't heard yet. So I'm still exploring that decade along with all the other decades of these eras of rock and pop music that started in the 50s. The 80s came along, and I remember during the 80s, I intensely, for the most part, disliked the 80s. I felt to a large degree the 80s were a victory of style over substance. As time has gone on, I've been reevaluating the 80s, and it wasn't all as bad as I probably thought it was. There was actually a lot of great music, and some of it I'm finding I like a whole lot more. There were many reasons why I didn't like the 80s that I won't get into here. And some of what I said about it being a victory of style over substance is true. There was a lot of that, and our media was saturated with it, but it wasn't all bad. There were some really good things during that decade as well. The 90s came along, and for a brief moment, rock and roll was reborn. And this happened with Nirvana. And for just a brief moment, rock and roll was just going through a renaissance, and I was just thrilled. Sadly, it faded away. It was overcome by the boy bands. I always wondered why they called them bands, because they're not bands. They were boy singing groups, vocal groups. Nothing wrong with vocal groups either, but they just aren't bands. Also, it was taken over, I think, by the coming of what I would refer to as the Pop-Tarts, the Britney Spears, that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that they weren't all untalented singers. Many of them were. Some of them were. Some of them weren't really, but some of them were. But this kind of happened too. And, and that was the 90s. And during the 2000s, I remember everybody saying, well, we're going to see a renaissance, a real golden age. The internet is going to bring a golden age of music, because now, the computers and laptops and the internet, people are going to be able to, they're not going to have to need record labels anymore. They're going to be able to make music out of their own homes, and they're going to be able to just put it up on the internet and just be exposed to the world. And this was true to a certain extent. But it didn't create, I think, the worldwide renaissance that some people thought it would, where, where all this new music would get exposed. By and large, radio has stuck with just, certain formats, and this has been, pop, modern country, and hip-hop. And I have nothing against these genres, by the way. There has been good music in these genres. I don't want it to appear like I say these genres are bad. But by and large, a lot of the music sounds very safe that you hear on the radio, and it sounds very much the same. And there are reasons behind that. I've heard other people talk about it in other videos. I've been aware of this myself for some time, and I should probably talk about it in a video at some point. But needless to say, it's all been pretty safe, in my opinion. I've always been passionate and excited about hearing new music, or discovering old music that I've never heard before. I've always been excited about exploring all of this, and I've never been one of those who settles into listening to the same 12 classic rock songs that classic rock radio plays, and this is very true of a lot of people in my age demographic. They kind of just settle into that and they just listen to the same 12 songs in classic rock radio over and over again. I've never been content with that. I've always wanted to explore new things and hear new things. And I remember a year ago last January, in 2017, I was very disappointed with the fact that I just wasn't discovering that much that was really exciting me. And I just thought, you know, am I just getting old, or am I getting cynical? Have musicians run out of ideas? You know, is there nothing new or no new ways that they can make exciting music? Once again, I'm not saying it was all bad, but just there wasn't a whole lot of it. And I was trying to find things that, you know, that I could bring to the Music Worth Buying program with Robert. And I was kind of dismayed by how little I could find. I remember expressing that to Robert. He says, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot good out there that I can honestly say I'm excited about. But not so this year. Beginning in January, there has been so much exciting new music that I have heard and continue to hear, and that I want to bring on the Music Worth Buying show with Robert and get his thoughts on it, and, you know, expose it to, you know, expose the music to you folks too. In addition to that, also a lot of the music that Robert's been bringing on, I've been going like, wow, this is, you know, like exciting me too as well. Robert and I don't always see eye to eye on the same music. We are respectful to each other about it. We don't like insult each other. You know, if we don't quite see eye to eye, we disagree. But one thing that Robert and I share is he has that same passion about hearing and exploring new music. He's always open to hear things. And so that's something he and I share in common. We both are always challenging our tastes and wanting to even hear things that we say we don't like. Let's just listen to it and see if it might hit us differently this time. We're both that way. And oftentimes there have been as many, even though there are times when we may not see eye to eye on the same exact artists and music, there have been plenty of times where I would not have discovered this music that I love had it not been for the fact that Robert brought it onto the show, and vice versa had I not brought it to him. But lately, even a lot of his stuff has really been like exciting me too. And there's stuff that I keep hearing that's like, wow, this is really good. Wow, this is really good. And it's more than I can actually bring onto the show. Robert and I just can't get together enough to be able to talk about it. And what I'm trying to get at here is there's been so much stuff this year. I kind of wonder that maybe this musical renaissance is happening now. The only thing is that you can't hear this stuff on the radio. You have to seek it out. But it's there, and it's great. I'm reminded of an article I read several years ago about kids in Iran forming rock and roll bands. Now, in Iran, rock and roll is illegal. You know, you could get arrested for listening to it, much less playing it. And these kids, these teenagers in Iran, they form these underground rock and roll bands. They play rock. They do these underground shows, knowing they could be arrested for it. And I remember reading an interview with one of the kids, and this was, I think it was in Rolling Stone magazine, or maybe it was in Music Connection magazine, I'm not sure which. I do remember this was during the George W. Bush administration. This is to give you an idea of the time frame. And this one kid was saying that the revolution has already happened. It's generational. Through the internet, we've discovered Western culture, we've discovered Western music, and we're not going back. And he said, you know, the revolution's already happened. And I hope that that ends up being true. I really do. It was a very inspiring story. And these kids, they're the real rock and roll rebels, because, I mean, they could get arrested for listening to stuff. Who knows? I mean, maybe they could even get the death sentence for listening to this stuff or playing this stuff. but it was very inspiring. And but the idea that the revolution's already here, it's already happening. He said, our parents just don't know it yet. And I kind of feel the same way, that maybe the revolution, the new music revolution is already here. We just aren't aware of it yet. And so, if you subscribe to a streaming service, just randomly start listening to albums. If you see artwork that you like, just listen to it. Check it out for a few minutes. What's it going to hurt you? You never know what you might find. This is in large part how I discover music these days. I just go on to a streaming service like Spotify or Tidal, look at the new releases, and I just start playing stuff. Let's just see what it is. Who knows? You don't know. And I realize, and I hope you're watching our show, Music Worth Buying. I really do. I realize that there are some people who will probably only tune in if we're talking about an artist that they're familiar with already. People tend to be that way with music. We like familiarity. We like hearing what we've already heard before. We're almost like kids who like to hear the same bedtime story over and over again. I've noticed this. And that's a whole other little video I should probably make at some point about the psychology involved with that. But hopefully you'll watch Music Worth Buying regardless of who we're talking about, even if it's someone you don't know, so that you'll just expose yourself to hopefully something new and maybe find something that you're excited about. Because I really feel this year there's been so much great new music that it's happening. And, that's why Robert and I do that Music Worth Buying show. It's probably the one thing that gets the least amount of views on the channel. And I'm not trying to do a commercial here for the show. I'm trying to do what I've always been passionate about, which is shed a light on new music. I know people love it when I talk about classic stuff, when I do an analysis of those things. But I really like shedding a light on new music, and so does Robert. We're both very passionate about that. That's why we keep doing this. We're committed to it. And, I would encourage you to watch so that you can be exposed to new music, but I would also encourage you to just simply check out what's out there. The internet is this huge playing ground. There's just so much stuff out there. Check it out on YouTube. But I personally think the streaming services are the best because you've got a section there called new releases, new albums. Start listening. You don't know what you might find, That other stuff, the old stuff you already know that you love, it's still going to be there, But set aside a little time to check it out, because I really do feel like exciting things are happening as far as music creation. It is true that people can make music on their laptops and can create exciting new stuff. Some people are still doing it the more traditional route, of course, but there's no wrong way. And I have to be honest, this year, in 2018, I'm extremely excited about what's already happened so far and what's yet to come. And so stay tuned and keep listening, everybody. Stay passionate about the music, everyone. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.